You're listening to the North Avenue Podcast, episode 47, Michael A. Wood Jr.
Yes.
All right, today we are joined by Michael A. Wood Jr. Do you like that whole name, or you just...
I think I only decided to do that because of having the name Michael, that you have to do something to stand out. And then if it's Wood, I mean, that's relatively common as well, especially with the S on it. So I got to do something that I don't get blended in with everybody else.
Nice.
Thank you so much for coming down here. This is awesome. Really appreciate it. Before we, get into like all kinds of doom and gloom, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate what you're doing, and it's odd that you seem like such a good guy. Like immediately, you seem such an advocate of love and peace, and that's much appreciated. I don't see anybody else doing that, and I love what you're doing. So
I appreciate it. I think it's a relatively new evolution, I guess, of my personality to think of things that way, to lead with empathy beforehand. Going to the other side of the badge really just dramatically changed my perspective, and I really think that's the way we have to be, like, as society. That's coming out, that we are one person, we are the same race. There isn't all these divisions. And if we don't start treating each other like brothers and sisters, we're like, that would be like de-evolving. We need to like evolve to past this point where we think of only our tiny little thing that's everybody that looks the same or has the same interests or whatever echo chamber you're in. We've really got to break out of that and embrace all of us, because there really just isn't a difference. Like, all the differences are just social constructs.
It's fun. It's just funny when you say that, because you sound like that's what someone who just did ayahuasca comes back and says, wait, like this seems like somewhat of a recent brain chemical change, maybe, or were you always just a compassionate kid?
I think yeah, I mean, you can say I was compassionate, I was normal, I would cry about things or didn't want to see people get hurt. But I went into the Marine Corps at 17. And so that entire going to combat, going to, like I still thought I was the good guy. I just didn't perfectly evaluate what my actions actually were and what that resulted in. And getting to the other side, I realized what our actions consequentially resulted in. And we can't do things that treat our fellow human beings that way. I felt when I was in the police department and in the Marine Corps that what we did was the right thing. You're told that your whole life, that this is the right thing, this is what you do. Police are the good guys. We go after drugs, right? Because drugs are bad, okay? And so you think you're doing good. You just really do. And there's nothing in criminal justice or in the training that teaches you to think critically instead of just doing what you're told. You're just supposed to do what you're told.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so
interesting.
You had talked about, like, okay, so part of this change, one of the catalysts of it was, being in covert, watching drug dealers and seeing them interact with their families, and is that kind of the beginning of when you started?
Yeah, sure. And certainly there's a continuum. Nothing in life is really that light switch, because you have to get to a point where you're willing to flip the switch. So everything is a continuum that's subconscious. And just thinking back, I would remember sitting there and watching everybody and feeling, so if I was in uniform, I would have gone into these blocks and I would have felt a certain level of threat, like I was being watched and every action I did was being judged. Or maybe like the cop being there is like a reality camera. Like there's no such thing as reality TV because there's the camera there. There isn't reality with the camera. So maybe having that uniform on created a false reality because of my mere presence. And then being in drug work and being hidden. So, I mean, literally, I was feet away from everybody as they were doing drug transactions, sitting there recording it, and they had no idea I was there, and I was protected, I was safe, I wasn't influencing the environment, and it was acting as it normally would, and as it acted as it normally would, that fear, that feeling that I was in a foreign place, just really slowly dwindled away, and they didn't know I was there, but like I was part of their environment, and it wasn't such a bad place.
How long will you be posted up in places like that?
Up to 16 hours a day.
Oh my God.
So you like get up early. Shops open up early. A lot of people think that for some reason because the violence occurs at night, that's when drug dealing is, and drug dealing is actually in the morning for the most part. So I would have to get there before they opened up shop, and they would open up shop soon after sunrise. So I'd have to be there a couple hours beforehand so I could get in without anybody seeing me. And then I couldn't leave until everybody was settled in and went on their way, so I could actually get out. So it was a big process to get in and out. Sometimes you have to do diversions, like nobody would leave, so you'd have to be like, we have to do something. So we'd have to like get other cops or something to like create a diversion, so I could get the hell out of there.
Wow.
Everything's about drugs, isn't it?
Everything.
Everything's about drugs.
Yeah, I mean we can kid ourselves about it being about other things, but your vast majority of resources go towards drugs. I was being a narcotics detective. Think about all the equipment I had. So in that unit, we had about 6 people with a supervisor. Each of these people are making minimum of $70,000 a year. We have unmarked cars. We have equipment. We have RAMs. We get search warrants. We go through paper like crazy. We do subpoenas. So we're costing AT&T money. We're costing all these different entities that play a part. We have gas. We have fixing people's doors after we bust them in. Sometimes that happens. We have the damage that we do to our houses. So just think about all the monetary incentive that's involved in us going after something that is essentially a negative to society. We are exacerbating our very own problems by going after the citizens and then putting them in a cycle where they can't get a real job, so now that's their only job, and now you're. I mean, it's quite pathetic in its obviousness.
Yeah, it's super obvious. It's annoying when people address their frustration locally, and I just see this. This is just America. This is how this is run in every city. You hear these stories popping up all the time, and when it's frustrating when people are relying on let's get rid of a mayor, let's get rid of a police commissioner, when you're just cutting off the head of another.
Sure. So Commissioner Davis, interim commissioner, that's added on there until somebody takes it off.
Guy, right?
He stated as he took over that Anthony Batts was a true reform commissioner and his personal mentor. And we expect change.
And Batts came from Oakland, right?
Batts came from Oakland.
Police brutality was huge.
And they had riot. Right, so you have 2 places that he's been to that are where the community is so disenfranchised with policing that you have uprisings and property destruction, and their question is never, well, how have we gotten into this situation? What have I done to play a part in this? What is my responsibility in this? They just want to blame everybody else for all these problems that happen, but we have to have leaders that actually step up and do something new. Is that going to happen in Baltimore? It sure shit does not look like it.
When the National Guard came in after the riots, uprising, whatever you want to call it, in April, they moved in like it was like this was a test, like they moved in with quickness. They looked like they were setting up just let's see how this plans out, and then they obviously stomped out everything, when they lined up around the harbor, which was just insane, just guys with machine guns around there. Do you feel like they can jump into cities quickly just to see if they can? Do you think the police really had no control?
I don't think the National Guard will have any ill will. They are so disconnected from the realities of the street that I'm not sure. I think they're probably just like, oh shit, we have to go do this. What do we do? Most of those guys have no idea what it's like to be in the city, and they're probably just sitting there scared. And in reality, their rules of engagement, they're not really going to do anything.
Right.
They're more of a show of force than anything. You have to be worried about what the police are going to do, not about what the National Guard are going to do.
Sure.
I know they look oppressive and they look scary, but there's just and I don't know, it happened at a college in, what was that, Ohio or something, where the National Guard ended up shooting
Under Nixon?
a bunch of, yeah, it was
Years
a long time
ago. Yeah.
So
Neil
I
Young wrote a song about it.
It's certainly feasible. I don't know. I don't see that in a modern National Guard. I think those guys just want a paycheck and didn't really actually expect to have to do anything. That's why you joined the National Guard, right? You don't join the military because you didn't expect or desire to actually do anything.
Exactly. You had talked about, I've heard you previously talk about, I think you made a statement along the lines of, you never feared the streets, but you feared other officers. What did you mean by that?
There's a great line in the little skit in End of Watch, the movie, where the veteran officer is talking to the two rookies that are going out there and trying to chase the stats, and he's going, "You guys are fools. You're out here doing this. You're risking your lives, and the police department, that's just going to fuck you in the ass over and over and over, and you're going to sit there and give them what they want, and as soon as you let your guard down, they're just going to come right after you, and you're just going to be the fool." It's a really nice way, the way this veteran officer tells it, and it's incredibly realistic. On the street, I don't know. It could be my own naivety, but I really felt that, okay, there's a rule to the drug game. Like, if you watch The Wire, you know there's certain things you abide by. If you abide by the rules of the game, I don't really think there's a physical threat. If I go after a drug dealer and I treat him with respect, I only go with the shit that I really got him on. If I get him clean, and he knows I got him clean, they're just like, here's what it is. You know, I didn't do him dirty. I got him legit. And so that was never like a problem. That wasn't a thing. It's that respect mentality on the street. It goes that way with cops too. If you are respectful of even the quote unquote bad guys, they tend to treat you with respect in return. I mean, every person that I ever dealt with knew I wasn't going to hurt them or something for no reason. So, and I wasn't going to put anything on them that they didn't actually do. So what would be the point of being mad at me?
Yeah.
There just wasn't one. So what was there to fear? I don't know. It could be just being naive. I'm being overconfident. But I really felt that the injustices within the department are much more of a threat towards these officers than the streets. For instance, no one on the streets is telling you to raid that house and go after that minor drug possession. It's the city that's telling you to do that. And
Right.
when you do that, that's when you get hurt. You know, all these things where cops are getting hurt unnecessarily are because they're doing the things that these commanders are telling them. If we end the drug war, a lot less cops get hurt. So I don't understand why we don't focus on that kind of an aspect.
Fear seems to be a huge topic and stuff with some of these incidences. I mean, obviously, the Tamir Rice thing where they shot the 12-year-old kid. So fear is really a problem, right? I mean, fearful officers tend to overreact, or
Yeah, I think they tend to pull the trigger because they're not confident in their ability with their hands. They're not confident in their ability to verbalize something that they're trying to do. I mean, you can trick if somebody's trying to threatening to kill somebody or something. We know there's negotiators that have been pretty darn good and have gotten people to just verbally talk them down. So if you don't have confidence in those skills, you don't have confidence in your physical skills, and the only thing you know that you have is that gun, it's the same as the street. They shoot because everybody knows that you're just punks. You used to be able to fight, and now nobody's going to fight. And it's the same thing with cops. They're not going to fight because
Right.
a good majority of them are going to lose that fight every
Sure.
single time.
That's so crazy. I've been training jiu-jitsu since June. Never ran across a single cop. It's such a great, it's very defensive. Teach you how to get back to your feet really quickly, get out of things, escapes. It's just amazing that there isn't, some of the officers I see around town, I'm like, oh my God,
The agency
man.
would have to support that, though. So you have no incentive to be good. There's no requirement for these things. There's no investment in the city to do that. So, for instance, when I worked street enforcement in narcotics, we worked from 7 at night to 3 in the morning. You were almost assured that you were going to get an hour or two of overtime at the end of the shift just to clean stuff up from the arrests you made during the day. Now it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Remember, I live close to an hour away, like a lot of other cops. So now it's 6 o'clock in the morning by the time you get home. You eat, you do what you can, you say hi to your family, and you got to get back to court by 9. So you go back to court, and then you leave court, and while you're at court, you're bitching because the prosecutor is calling 18 cases for people that either aren't there or aren't damn day work, and you're sitting there waiting and waiting. So it could be up to 11 o'clock by the time you leave. You get home at 12. Maybe you can get in a few hours of sleep, get a shower, and then you're back at work at 7. So where would even the time
Right.
for jiu-jitsu or anything come in? Even to take care of yourself physically,
Yeah.
the time really isn't there. There's no investment in the officers.
Right, they're being treated like shit.
Absolutely treat it with complete shit, have no support.
Right.
And then, like, one of the great tragedies to me is they think I'm part of that problem. But I really, really want to give them what they need,
Yeah.
and create a system where they're not being told to go raid some dude's house and take away his income because the system has set himself up that this is his only option to feed his family. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's like they're being treated like shit, and obviously people in black neighborhoods, it's like you're poor and black, you're just a target.
Yep, without a doubt.
Wow, that's really interesting. So let's go real quick. Let's go to that one Twitter question that was good. It mentioned, I don't know how it went, but it mentioned police living in the communities where they work and the disconnect there. Why Shrewsbury? Why is everybody out in the county and away?
All right, so all I can do to begin with is to tell why I left. Okay, I grew up in the county and came to the city. Obviously very common. The truth is I came to the city because that's where the action is. I came from the Marine Corps. I wasn't going to write traffic tickets on 83 like a brown clown, so that wasn't going to be my path. I was going to go, I mean, even if I worked for a county, I was going to find some way to do something exciting. I wasn't going to
Sure, you're
sit there
like 24 at this point.
yeah, a little younger than that.
Right.
So I wasn't going to, you know, do something where I was messing with the average working person. Came to the city. By time I had my daughter, and she was going to school, like even the option of living in Essex where I was at the time, to me that just wasn't an option. I wasn't going to send my child to school in Essex if I had a means not to. Regardless of any other ethical argument somebody can have, if her interests are going to trump those other desires. So I wanted to move to a place where she had a yard, she had a safe street to ride her bike on, and she had a school that, you know, was nice and clean and didn't have any problems. And so I moved. I felt like I owed that to her. I brought her into this world.
Sure.
You know, that's my obligation to her. Whether officers should live in the community or not is actually quite perplexing. It seems simple on the surface to say that they should. But for one, you're not going to police where you actually grew up. So for instance, if we all grew up together and I became the cop, you were a drug dealer, Mike, and you tended to beat people up in your neighborhood or whatever.
Right.
What are the odds that I'm going to do anything to you guys?
Right.
They're fucking zero. You know, I'm not going to. So do I really want to be in that environment? I don't think so. So now we're making the case that you're going to say, even if you grow up in West Baltimore, you're going to police East Baltimore. Right?
Yeah.
You just can't be actually where you grew up. That doesn't make sense. So
Because of the bias, right?
Right. Now, the problem that comes in is that, especially in a city like Baltimore, you have two Baltimores. So even if I live in the Northwest and I'm policing in West Baltimore, I'm still in an entirely different world that is functionally no different than me being in Shrewsbury. You can make the tax base argument, and I think that's a legitimate argument, but the actual effectiveness as an officer, I don't think is actually different whether I live in Northeast Baltimore or I live in Shrewsbury, because I'm still that disconnected from my policing area. What has to be done is I have to be forced into that community that I'm actually policing. So you can do that through certain programs where you're intentionally changing like the metric. So I don't think arrest should be a metric. So if I was the commissioner and I assigned you to your post, I would not ask you once how many people you arrested. I would want to go to that neighborhood and see how many neighbors knew your name. I would want to know.
If you're the commander?
Yeah, I want to know how many kids in the neighborhood know who you are. I want to know what problems you've solved by means other than arrest, what those means were, and how effective they were, so we can do that in another area of the city to try and solve a problem where taking away someone's freedom and their constitutional rights is the last thing that we absolutely do. So that's how you get in. For me personally, it came through tuition reimbursement, where they ended up doing this little program where they forced me to go to a rec center. And when I went to the rec center, I thought it was the worst idea in the goddamn world. But when I went there, it was amazing, and I had a great time with the kids all day long. I had to volunteer there, so it was like my off time. But I spent all day with those kids, had a great time, and from every time that I went after that, I brought my daughter with me, and that not only helped fix my perspective, that's going to set a tone for her perspective for the rest of her life, in that she has nothing to fear going to a rec center in Baltimore City, whereas a lot of county people are going to have that fear, which makes you treat them like others and then not care what happens to the city. So when you say that it's a human problem and it's an American problem, it certainly is. It's just that with all the power in policing, those policies and that's the social norms and that we've set up come to the surface much easier.
Do you have any faith at all in, if this is a systemic problem, do you have any faith in all, anybody at City Hall, any sort of change that's going to come up there? Or is this just sounds so fucked, doesn't it? It just sounds like this is happening all over the place. It's like war on drugs. That doesn't seem to be, I mean, there's I guess, a couple strides being taken, but, I mean, what are the drugs we're talking about? Heroin and coke, right? It's
in the city, it's mainly heroin. You don't really come across much else. Yeah. I mean, it's really the big thing. You have some crack, you have some cocaine. Obviously, you have weed everywhere.
But they wouldn't legalize heroin.
I'm for it, legalizing heroin.
Because that would end violence.
I'm
right?
for complete legalization.
Sure.
I feel as though it's a medical problem. It is not a criminal problem. And the idea that any addiction, I mean, it's essentially, pick any other disease. You know, if you had Lou Gehrig's disease, I'm like, bitch, you got Lou Gehrig's disease.
Right.
You know, it's time to go to jail. You know, like,
oh man,
the entire concept is ridiculous. So whether it's heroin or PCP, I'm completely for legalization of all of it. And so remember, legalization doesn't mean condoning. Cigarettes are completely legal, and the usage has dropped off incredibly through education. So you just educate people on why it's bad. If Amazon sold heroin today, I wouldn't order it.
I would. I'm just kidding.
The people that do, at least they'll know the purity, and they won't overdose. They're going to know what they have. And sometimes it can sound bad to say create functional addicts, but I mean, I saw a study that 90% of heroin addicts are functional addicts. So they go to their job every day, they do everything like they normally do, but for some reason, the guy that does heroin and goes and is a functional addict is viewed entirely different from the person that does caffeine every morning and at lunch to get through his day in a functioning addict. Because I can tell you this much right now, if I don't have caffeine in about 5 hours, I will freak the hell out, and I will have a headache, and I will be sick, and I will be grumpy, and I will be miserable, just like somebody that didn't have heroin for a while would be. So there's no reason to lock me up because I enjoy coffee in the morning, and there's no reason to lock a heroin addict up because he enjoys heroin in the morning. As long as you don't affect somebody else, then we have laws for what you did that affected somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah, I work at a bar. I mean, it's amazing that alcohol is
the worst drug on our planet. There you go.
It tastes like bubble gum now. Just pour it in a plastic cup. Yay, we're going to
and it's toxic.
It's crazy.
It'll
kill you.
Yes, kill you. It kills every drug that kills more people than any other drug, and it's perfectly fine.
On one of these ride-along videos that someone had done with you, something very interesting. You had pointed out like trash on the corner or weeds and stuff like that, and you said like, look, we can make a phone call. We can get city workers out here and fix that up and get people in the community. Like, I never had thought that would be...
Yeah, because that's true community policing.
Right.
Community policing that you see in common speak is a bastardization of true community policing. So even if you just think, okay, so broken windows, the idea is that if there's an array of windows and one is broken, it's more likely that someone is going to come break a second one. So if you quickly fix the first one, then somebody will not break the second one. in law enforcement, they've changed that to me, that if somebody commits a minor crime, then you lock them up, and the next person won't commit a minor crime. That's been proven to be false. That doesn't actually work. To actually apply community policing and broken windows, from the officer's level, it involves fixing the broken windows. It doesn't involve, putting a piece of plywood over them and going, that window's not broken. It involves actually going and fixing the problem. So I would want an officer, for instance, I would get calls for kids playing in the street, playing football. And one time I went to the call. I said, guys, you can't play football on the street. You know that. And they looked at me and said, okay, where are we going to play football?
Right.
And I said, well, there is a field over there. I said, well, the grass is 10 inches high. There's broken glass. There's needles. There's all kinds of shit in there. Go look at it yourself. You're not going to play on it. I said, okay. Just continue to play in the street then. So I just, I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
So what I should do is I should have the power and the time to say, fuck that. We're going to fix that lot so you guys can play football there. And even if it involves the officer getting some community members together and getting those kids to sit down for a day with a couple of other officers and go out there, take your shirt off, and fix the goddamn lot. That's community policing.
Yeah, I didn't even think that would be part of it. I just always thought, well, that's someone else's problem, especially in a city like this.
Because you think law enforcement.
Right.
And that's gotten to our minds. We say that. Law enforcement.
Right.
No, it's not enforcement. It's supposed to be peace officers. It's supposed to be guardians. It's supposed to be a police officer. Policing does not mean take to jail. Policing in the military means clean the shit up. Yeah, clean the shit up.
Sure.
That doesn't mean take everybody and throw them in jail so that they're not there at the moment. It means fix the problem.
And law enforcement, you explained that, in that video, you can't drive down the street fully legal.
Yeah, that's the overcriminalization problem. Nobody can do anything.
You can't. Nobody can do anything perfectly legal. So everybody's kind of breaking law. So it's just a matter. You're overloading the offense there.
Right. So in Baltimore, it's illegal to spit on the sidewalk. Right.
Right.
So if you sneezed and snotted on the sidewalk, you are technically in violation and can be arrested.
Right.
Does that make sense to anybody?
Wow.
So nobody can actually live their life without being a criminal, and actually breaking those laws.
Right.
For instance, if you said, hey, pick these up for me and I'll give you $10, and I didn't claim that on my taxes, well, that's tax evasion.
Right, sure.
So all these things are technically, people say, oh, I'm not a criminal. Freddie Gray was a criminal. No, bitch, you're all criminals.
Right.
You just don't have a record.
Right.
He does
Yeah.
because of where he lives and who he is.
And he's fucked where he lives. What
Right,
would you
absolutely
be doing
fucked.
when you live in that neighborhood?
Right. So that's one thing that was clear to me quickly. There was a kid, Daniel, that I really just, I really fucking like this kid. I could clearly see that if we had grown up next to each other, this kid would be one of my best friends. But he's now spending a long time in jail, having never committed a violent crime, and I'm a retired officer and have a resume that looks wonderful. But functionally, me and that kid Daniel were the same damn person. The difference was I'm white and I grew up in Abingdon. It's just the facts.
Sure.
If I was black, or even if I was white and I grew up in Gilmore Homes, I would have been a shithead.
Yeah.
I went to the Marine Corps at 17 because I was a shithead. To get my shit together. No different for anyone else. When I walked down the street with a dime bag in my pocket, no one ever looked.
Right.
If I were to have 2 dime bags and I sold one to my friend, technically that's distribution, but no one would have ever known.
Sure.
It's those things. The president has admitted to smoking weed,
Right.
yet he runs and is in charge of the DEA, locking up people for doing what he fucking did.
Yeah.
And we can't live that way anymore. We have to know that. So when you say, should I have confidence that things are going to change? Yes, they're absolutely going to change.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how fast we can do it. Right now, Joe Carter is the only politician in this area that has spoken to me, which I find baffling because I've had politicians from other states call me
Really?
I have media from Australia and from Germany and from Great Britain calling me to get my insights on police reform. These politicians have me in their backyard, and they don't give a shit because they have no interest in actually changing this thing. Joe Carter's the only one that has any interest in doing something quickly to change what we're doing in law enforcement. You see these guys, they're going to sit there and say it, but we've been a year away from Freddie Gray. What has changed? A year away from Mike Brown, nothing's changed. And we're, 6 months away from Freddie Gray.
15
and what
years
has changed?
almost from The Wire.
Right. Nothing's changed. No one gave a shit about North and Pensy 2 weeks before. No one gave a shit about North and Pensy 2 weeks after. No one pays attention that you watched all that footage and you didn't see a goddamn single grocery store. You didn't see a single resource for everybody. And all they do is see what they have already told themselves they want to see. So as soon as we get that generation out that does that shit, I really think we're going to win regardless. It's just a matter of how we go about it.
Sure.
The rise in murders recently, in the last couple months, this summer, what is going on right there? Arrests are just down. What do you think is happening right now?
The first step there is that anybody that tells you that they think they know why is lying to you.
Okay.
Nobody knows why. I mean, if we knew why, we'd fix it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't do those things. If I have my theory, or hypothesis, not theory, is that what we do in law enforcement is we continue to aggressively attack things. So the only answer is that everything is a now and we're the world's biggest hammer and we're just going to keep beating it down.
More power,
every time.
more power, more power.
So you get something like Fred Beefield, who was here, and bad guys with guns, you start locking people up, you go aggressive into that stuff that I was doing. So the whole time, everything that I've revealed is under Beefield's rule when I was doing drugs. So let's go out there and you get the shit done. That whole time that you're doing that, you don't... You sow the seeds for where the problems come from. So if I keep beating you down, I take away the jobs, I take away your car, I take away the resources that you have. Now your money gets funneled into paying bail. So you sow all these seeds that create the socioeconomic problems in these areas, and then there's a delay in them coming back to get you because people got to get out of jail, the things take time to settle in. So I imagine that when you see upticks like you do in Milwaukee and Cleveland and in Baltimore right now and in Ferguson, you're going to see a stamp down where these things went down because of heavy police action. And then they sowed those seeds so you actually get the problems worse. And then the law enforcement answer is oh, well, we made a bigger hammer, so we'll do it again. And then we make a bigger hammer and we do it again. Instead of actually going to the root cause to stop sowing those seeds. That's my hypothesis. I am pretty sure that if you look at these cities, you're going to see that ebb and flow of it coming back to get you.
If you had a guess as to what's going to happen with these indictments, what do you think? You think they're going to walk?
I think the bottom two, I think they all deserve guilty on something. The bottom two, I don't see getting in jail time. The two original cops, based off the idea that Freddie Gray did die in the van. That's where the injuries came from. Those two cops that first got there, Nero and I don't remember the other name, they were listening to a lieutenant. They had no time on. I feel like they're kind of pawns caught up in the system. I don't think that alleviates their responsibility, but I think it does something to mitigate the punishment you put on them. I think it would be wrong for those guys to see jail time, but a suspended sentence or something like that, probation, community service, whatever it is, would be applicable, complete ban from policing forever, something like that. But I just don't see those bottom two as having malice or especially when you had two supervisors there. It kind of... I feel that I was a supervisor, so that if I was on scene and I did something, I really feel that that officer that I told to do something doesn't bear the responsibility I do. And Rice and the other sergeant that were there really should step up and say, and really take that blame. Like, as a leader, you should be taking that blame because you misguided those two.
Yeah, maybe it's got all this national attention now. It's a huge thing. I'm surprised it hasn't happened before. Like remember when the riots happened, it was like the least surprising event I'd ever seen. I was like I could feel the tension for years, and it was just like why are they rioting? I'm like you're lucky they weren't rioting for the last 20 years. You know, it's like it's crazy. What kinds of things can? Because we don't want to all put all the blame on cops. You know, like we said, they're getting treated like shit too.
Yeah, we do.
What? Yeah.
Yeah. You're the one
Because
with the
they're the-
power.
they're
You're the one
middlemen.
with the authority. The idea that it goes on to the community is ridiculous to me. If I'm the king, or if I'm Bats, because this is what Bats does, I don't go and blame my commanders for my lack of leadership. I don't blame my officers for me not having training programs in for them. The onus is on the police. We have the power, we have the authority, we have the money. It is on us.
And it's just little things like that, like not trying to find a football field, because that seems like that would be the problem, like kids.
Well, that's
right?
not your incentive. So
Right.
if Kevin Davis wasn't talking out of his ass, he would say tomorrow, none of these officers are going to be judged or evaluated by the amount of arrests that they make.
So he has that power to do that.
You could say it right now. I mean, we have evaluations. You get evaluated every 6 months. No officer will get a job or be judged based upon their arrests. Easy. Because why would that be a metric that we have? But that's the only metric that we really have and that we really go by. You get special jobs because of your arrests. You get secret information. You get into the good old boys club. You get supervisor favoritism because of the arrests. The same was true in my own squads. I had my guys get a lot of arrests. We led the city almost every single time in the amount of arrests that we made, the entire city. And that's my logic in that was that if we gave command what they wanted, they would leave us alone and I could treat my officers in that way that they needed to be treated to be effective employees and take away some of that feeling of constantly being beat down that they have from the inside. I made it my mission to be an effective buffer between command and my people. And by doing that, I really perpetuated that problem much more because I use that arrest as a legitimate metric.
It seemed like you started out reluctant to sort of come forward with this, the way that you speak and everything. Or do you worry about what other cops think? Do you have to look over your shoulder?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the fact that they think I'm the enemy.
But
Not all of
not
them
all
do.
of them do, right?
I mean, a significant portion certainly do.
Do they reach out to you?
I've had only a couple reach
The
out.
ones that are probably about to quit, right?
No, I mean, around the nation, I've had a lot of officers call and email in support. Locally, I've had a couple call in support, and I've had only a handful be negative. But this negativity doesn't actually come from any of the points. It comes from the fact that I'm tearing down that wall that they hid behind, and that I'm exposing what we do while I'm out and safe. And that's legitimate criticism. It's just that I'm sorry I couldn't articulate this or have the courage to do so earlier, but I can't change that.
Right. I like how you said that when it was exciting to be a cop, you know, and you
That's
you
a
were
fucking
like,
thrill. I
hop
mean,
in a
like
car
right
and
now,
chase-
if it was like a car chase, I mean, I would still want to go get in that car
Yeah.
and do that chase. I mean, there is just, I have no hesitation to tell you, there is nothing in this world like a car chase. Nothing.
I bet.
I mean, it's just like if you watch it on TV and think if you were doing it, imagine it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like to me, like I didn't have the, I didn't need the win. I didn't have that feel. So like the whole participation was the victory. Like even if I lost the suspect or whatever, it's like,
Sure.
oh wow, that was so fucking awesome. You know,
Just to get the adrenaline.
right. I don't know. That sounds kind of bad, but it's honest. You know,
So
like-
kind of. I mean, well, I appreciate your honesty. That's what makes you so genuine. That you're not. You don't see. There's no element of shadiness to what you're doing. You know, like you're just like, hey man.
Yeah,
this
so
is
what am I
something-
trying to gain that
Right,
everybody
right.
thinks that I have something to gain? If it's like I'm not hiding anything, this is what I'm trying to do is have this discussion, have this out. If I'm doing something dumb and I'm saying something that doesn't make any sense, please tell me, like,
Right.
make your case and I will fucking change. I mean, that's the whole
Sure.
point, is really what has happened, is that I have been open and receptive to other ideas and listened to that evidence and changed. I was a Marine. I have 15 guns in my house. I grew up around a bunch of people that thought there were monkeys in the city and we had to contain them all to keep them from the counties. And I have my wife's family members like legitimately think you can vote for Trump, and that makes sense. So I have lost a tremendous amount of family and friends, but simply because I've heard better ideas and I've changed.
Sure.
So just listen to the ideas. If they make sense, at least give them a minute.
Sure.
That's really
Baltimore's
it.
set up like the counties. I heard you on other programs. They couldn't really get a good feel about how Baltimore
unique.
works. It's very unique. So when you say like that's how some of your family members think, that's how my family members think. They go back to the '68 riots and then they go, it's happening again. I got texts from family members that were like, it's happening again. I'm like, this is not the '68 riots. It's different.
The problem is it's starkly the same.
A lot of
We didn't
similar,
learn anything.
but
we
have
didn't
technology.
change anything.
We have technology. We can all communicate, which is different.
Sure. The movement
The movement
is
has changed.
certainly different.
Yeah, wouldn't have characters like you.
The conditions leading up to the uprising are the fucking same. And I really want to see what would happen, but I tweeted this morning, like, I really want to see what the commissioner was saying post the 1968 riots, because I have a sneaky feeling it's awfully the same as
Yeah.
what Commissioner Davis is saying
yeah.
right now.
It's scripted.
And we haven't learned a fucking thing.
It's very interesting that crack cocaine literally shows up in 1980, like in New York. It's just like drops a bomb on the black community.
Well, I don't know the historicity of that, but the 1980s is when the drug war really kicked off. So, like,
Reagan.
for instance, you don't know how my propensity to carry any drugs on me, because no one ever stopped me to give you those numbers, right? So if no one was looking for crack, like, how do we have a baseline to know where the crack was if
Yeah.
you're not looking for it?
Sure.
So I kind of have in law enforcement, we like to define things that this is definitely what happened, but we don't trace back the methodology and trace back the roots of how these things actually came to be common ideas of whether they're legitimate or not. And I think that's an example of one of them where I mean, if you're not collecting data on it, you just simply don't know.
When the mayor ordered, what do you think about the whole thing when the mayor allegedly said whatever it happened to stand down during the uprising?
I find it awfully, let's go with coincidental, that the police unions and everybody involved in that aspect gets very upset when they get armchair quarterbacked, but have no problem armchair quarterbacking the mayor. I don't know what would have happened if she would have done something differently. It's really hard to second guess a tactic that you don't know what would have happened otherwise. I think the department should have stood down, period. I don't think they should have been at Madonna Mall. I think the police department started the riots.
I do too.
So if we actually would have stood down, I'm not sure there would have been riots. It's one thing that always baffles me is that, oh my God, they were throwing bricks at us. Why the fuck you standing there?
Right.
Yeah, you're a target and saying, why am I being treated like a target? Well, don't stick people out there to be targets. It just doesn't make sense.
The news story that drove me fucking insane was that they had looted all the CVS's and now there's all this OxyContin on the streets, and that's why you're seeing a spike.
Okay. Yeah, there's a Justin Fenton moment for me. So
Yeah,
you can report that. Wonderful. Report
because
it.
that's a statement from the police.
Sure. Now do the math. On what influence 175,000 pills, which is a dramatic overestimation, what influence would that have on the street sale of OxyContins in Baltimore City? That might last an hour, 2, 3 hours. It's irrelevant. It's a blip. To think that something happened because of 175,000 pills of OxyContin, you've lost your mind and you have no idea the scope of the drug epidemic In Baltimore. It's everywhere. That shit means nothing.
Right. They it seems like when they also issued a statement, the police department, saying that they had reason to believe that gang members were coming together to take out law enforcement officers.
Seemed awfully,
Like,
what's the word there?
That was like the first thing I was like, what? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, setting it up.
that was the weirdest thing. And then those alleged drug dealers show up on like Stephen Colbert's show or one of the Daily Show.
No, it's not us. What are you talking about?
But I couldn't believe that they. Then I couldn't believe it was them showing up on that show. I was like, why would gang members call themselves gang members and then go on national television? It was just a bizarre, very bizarre day.
Yeah, I mean, gang members are like a family, though. You really have to see it for what it is. Just because you're a gang doesn't necessarily mean you're bad.
Sure.
If you have an environment where people feel like they don't have anyone to turn to, they're treated a certain way, you're gonna band together. We call that a gang. I just don't. I don't have the same problem with that.
It gives us a nice good guy, bad guy.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's just like so that if it's white, we call it a militia, but they band it together.
That's true.
And to protect themselves and to have a sense of family. Some of that we can probably embrace a little bit, or at least handle in a more cordial manner.
The other day, I'm walking down the street and there's two cops, helmets on top of Clydesdale horses. What the hell is going on there? Why are they on horses? These horses look miserable. They're shitting everywhere. Why are they on these giant horses? And they weren't going anywhere. They looked like they were just.
I really think it's
training.
just about history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's what we used to do, so we do that.
Yeah, I think they don't want to let that go. They've tried to let it go a couple times. I used to think there was an argument for horse in riot control. I mean, that's kind
Right,
of the
'cause you're
tactic
up
that you're
top.
taught. But I don't like that idea. And for one, they're awfully expensive for something that's incredibly rare. And I don't like they're good PR though, especially if they can go down, the Inner Harbor or when you have tourists and things like that. They're cool for that.
Sure.
But in a riot situation, I don't like the idea of like an innocent animal being sit there where people are going to throw bricks or bottles or something at a horse.
The horse is like, dude, I
feel
don't want to go to the
yeah,
riot.
I just don't even like that as like the idea. Like even like the canines where they're sitting there, it's like I don't know.
Right.
Don't let that dog have to deal with this shit. But like
So
humans.
what is the responsibility of the officer now to do the little things like you're talking about when they're riding along? Hey, let's fix that. Let's fix that. What is the responsibility of these officers? Granted that they're stuck under this umbrella, of what the chain of command, and they're being pressured.
The individual officer, it's so hard to put something on them, but they do have to understand that our job is to protect the Constitution, and that means like not violating somebody's rights against seizure and being searched, and just their freedom being taken away for things that you certainly wouldn't want. Like, I feel like if you just said, okay, would I lock my brother up for this? And the answer is yes, then lock him up. If the answer is no, then no, don't. Stop treating everybody else like they're a lesser human being than everyone that you empathize with. Extend that empathy and treat those people how you would expect to be treated. And it's like that basic, cardinal rule to treat others as you want to be treated. Stop worrying about your pride and your personal things, because that's what they do. They get upset because people will yell at them or protest against them, but they take it personally. They literally think that it's Mike that they're protesting against, and it's certainly not. They're protesting against the system. They're protesting against your bosses. You're bitching about your bosses when you're in the back room. They're bitching about your bosses too. Join teams. Yeah, your bosses fucking suck.
Yeah.
Let's concern ourselves with the fact that your bosses suck ass and fix them, because the individual officer should be understanding that the dangerous situations that they're in are from command. The reason that the community doesn't get along with them is because of command. We do have a mutual enemy. It's command and it's
Yeah.
politicians. Like, we actually have a common ground. Let's change those people, because cops don't want to be judged by arrest either. They want to be judged by something more meaningful. So let's judge them by something more meaningful. We have common ground.
Sure. Wow. It all seems so simple.
It does seem simple, and that's like one of my ultimate frustrations with the entire thing. But let's go through some questions. Like, let's see
Okay.
another one. I want to make sure, since I told people we would.
The other one was, would you be interested in was it like a walk, a community walk? Was that what it was?
Okay, so I have one with the Civilian Oversight Group.
Yes, that's what it is.
All right, so would I be open to willing to lead? It's Prime, I don't know who that is. Asked if I would be willing to lead a Civilian Oversight Group. I certainly would be willing to guide a Civilian Oversight Group. That's absolutely no question. Would the powers that be allow that? Currently, no.
Right.
This is, if there is an onus on somebody, it is actually on the people and the voters. If you want to change this, if Jill Carter announces, which I keep trying to get her to announce, vote for Jill Carter. Because if you actually care about what I'm saying, Jill Carter is the one that asked me to talk to her. Jill Carter is the one that's brought me into her office and talked to me. Jill Carter is the one that cares about my ideas and will actually back them up. None of these other politicians are going to make any of this progress. So if you go back in and you vote in Dixon, or you vote in, I'm sorry, I don't want to get on Nick Mosby. I don't know him, but I see a lot of people that are still incredibly naive to what the actual problems are. You need a politician that understands the problems, and there appears to only be one. So if you vote for the other ones, and that becomes your next mayor, I just kind of put my hands in the air. I don't know what else I'm supposed to do about that. Let's change it, but it's really on you guys. You gotta say, you gotta push these issues so that we actually have the change.
Yeah. So you do have faith in at least some people, because I was worried it just seems so hopeless.
It's hard with the you want to say the 20-year-olds, but like we were joking before we started recording that the old guard that watches TV and the average age of Fox viewer is literally like 70 years old. I mean, these ideas won't have a market soon. I think that
Sure won't.
that is inevitable, but I don't understand why we have to wait the 20, maybe 30 years it's going to take for our generation to take over. And I really had hoped that Marilyn Mosby was that person. I'm backtracking on that big time. I thought she was something that she doesn't appear to be. But we just have to go forward with the situation.
We're all waiting for the baby boomers to die. That's kind of it seems like it's just like that's.
But think about how many lives that we would have to deal with losing, and more oppression, more problems. Like I don't think we can wait for that. So I think that the victory is inevitable, but we can't afford to wait for it.
Yeah, you're gonna make it happen now.
All right, I found some more questions.
Because I was gonna ask you.
Whatever happens to you, you're under arrest. You have a right to remain silent. Okay, so you get that a lot. Like, they didn't read me Miranda rights. So in Miranda, I think it's Arizona, Miranda v. Arizona. The Miranda rights are for when you're being questioned as a suspect.
Okay.
So I hardly ever read Miranda rights, because if I was locking you up, I had you. I don't have shit to talk to you about. And so like, if you be silent, talk, whatever. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Because
I won.
I won. It's over. Not a big deal. So that's more applicable to like homicide investigations and something like that, where you have a suspect and you're questioning the suspect to try and get them to say something. If they're just something that you had a probable cause for an arrest for, you have everything you need. There's no reason to do Miranda. And not to mention, it's kind of, I don't know. Like, don't we all know it anyway? Like, y'all know, shut up. Like, my advice will always continue to be, if you are questioned by the police, what you say is,
right.
That's it.
Exactly.
So, the goal is to not get convicted. It's not to not get arrested. Getting arrested is fine.
Sure, that's just one step.
Getting
Right.
convicted is your problem. So shut
Front
the
end.
fuck up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the honest truth. Well, what other ones do we have? Why are white people in such denial regarding the fact of racial discrimination?
Oh my God. Why are white people in America?
Power. When you have the power, you don't want to secede it. So are they ignorant to it? I'm not sure. They may get it. They just don't want to acknowledge it, because if you acknowledge it, then you have to admit that you have to do something about it.
Yeah, and they're disconnected. They don't know what it's like to live in shit because they're comfortable. So when you're living out in White Marsh, or you're living out in Elgin City or whatever, you're just sitting there on your fucking heated seats watching CNN, just going, I don't understand why they're just acting like animals down there. You know, you don't know what it's like to be hopeless.
Yeah, I love it how they do that all the time for neighborhoods they've never been to.
Yeah.
And never will never will go to.
Sure.
Like, how does that matter?
There's people that live in the counties around here that are afraid to go to the city, and they ask me all the time, where are you? Are you around a danger zone? Like, I don't even know what that
Come on,
means.
come
on
you know?
down.
I don't even know what that means. But I'm like you. I mean, I'm lucky. I grew up out in the county, you know, educated, got to play sports.
Yeah, you don't-
never had to worry about the football field being shitty.
And nobody thinks to, like, that's why you have to go to these neighborhoods as officers. So even as an officer, you just don't get it. I mean, I just remember like a couple of times where things like that would happen, where it's like, shit, like I never thought of that because of that white privilege. Walking down the street, so you see people walking down the street all the time in the bad neighborhoods, right? And it's something that gets on your nerves. Like, seriously, there's a fucking sidewalk. Well, why aren't you walking on the sidewalk?
Right.
So I've done that before, where I pulled up, I was like, hey, you see that right there? It's called a fucking sidewalk. I don't understand why you're not on it.
Yeah.
And we're walking down the street, you know, like driving next to him. Like, I just don't understand what the problem is.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you see that sidewalk over there? There's like these nasty ass rats that hang out on the side of it. There's gross food there. You know, there's shit on the side. And I was just like,
You got to deal with every porch.
yeah. And I'm like, damn. All right, legitimate point. Walk on. You know, like, what are you supposed to say? Like, I never said anything to somebody about walking in the street after that because, well, shit, I never thought that if you walked on the sidewalk, like, there was going to be rats there, and you had to
Right.
worry about shit being on the sidewalk, or, you know, stepping on needles or whatever it was, because the environment was something that I didn't have to deal with.
I think Dave Chappelle said, like, black people are scared of the same things as white people are scared of. There's no difference, you know. Black people don't want to live around. There's no difference between
There absolutely, but it's a
any
genetic
people.
variable. There
Right.
is no
none,
difference.
no
Right.
scientific evidence of it. It's like, you know, it's like a black cat and a white cat. It's like, there's still a fucking cat. I don't know. It's amazing that we're so hung up on it in 2015. That's the most shocking thing. I don't follow politics at all. I mean, I'm not surprised about what characters like Donald Trump are saying, but I've heard worse shit, you know, from old white dudes around.
This
you know.
GOP field should solidify for us. You know, there can't be
That is so
a
crazy.
bigger. I mean, it's like the problems with conservatism have just flowed to the surface right now as we watch this, and it's great. I mean, honestly though,
It's entertaining.
Like, those guys, none of them has a single chance in hell against Bernie or Hillary. They don't have a chance whatsoever on a national stage. They're done.
Think Bernie's got a chance?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to get it. They're done. I mean, can you imagine Donald Trump in a debate with Bernie Sanders? The intellectual difference is staggering.
Yeah.
You know, it would be like the whole
But
country.
that's what I'm
was-
worried about. I mean, like, we kind of like, that's why we like George Bush, because he was dumb as shit. And when he came on the debates, he was so charming.
Yeah, that's
It was
what. That's
like,
what.
man, I
you're
love
like-
this guy.
Right.
He
It's
was just a
dangerous.
double.
People are like, yeah, America.
I don't think Trump is as likable.
No, not nearly.
But when you know, people talk a lot of shit about Bush, but when he first showed up, people were like, this guy, you know, he's smiley. He's like,
Oh, you got me there. Huh?
yeah, he talks like some dick in your family. You know what I mean? Just like all of us. Real quick, how did you had mentioned Kwame Rose? Is that his last name? How did you meet him?
Okay.
I know you wanted to talk together with him.
Kwame and I are working on a project together that we're really not supposed to talk about yet.
Okay.
So, because of this project, I reached out to him, and we met up, and he was receptive of it. the conversation that, and we've become friends since then. The conversation that we're still waiting to have is that every time we're somewhere, and somebody says, "Oh, hey, yo, you're hanging out, you two are, close together, so, yo, what do you think of him?" And he'll say something like, "Oh, he's cool now." What's this now? Or somebody be like, "Oh, so you like what he's saying?" And Kwame would be like, "Oh, well, not at first, but I get it." What are you talking about, man? Like, what did you think at first? But like every time he goes to say it, I'm like, no. You gotta, like, this is something we should record.
So you gotta get it on
because
record.
there is something in Kwame's hesitation. There is something genuine there that is about personal relationships and about distrust of police and about distrust of white people. So whatever that is there, I don't want to lose the authenticity of whatever his hesitation was at first. I think that's something we should capture because it's sure to be an issue with other people.
Sure.
I still think DeRay is that way.
DeRay does seem that way.
He, in person, he was very nice to me, very incredibly kind, incredibly receptive, incredibly talkative. But there is this lingering weight of distrust. He's never said it to me personally, but I just feel it from him in the exchanges we've had since then. That it's like he's saying what I have to say is valuable to the movement, but there is this distance of trust still in that. So you got to think, if they can't trust me, how apprehensive they are of somebody else trying to come in.
Well, you're almost too good to be true. It's like, why is this guy so cool and so open, and like it's almost like skeptical. It's almost like, whoa, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't give myself that much credit. I think that after I watched the Tamir Rice video, that any walls that I had up were trumped. So if I am embarrassed or ashamed or judged by anything that I say, or if something happens to me through what I do, I think whatever could possibly happen to me pales in comparison to the evil of allowing what happens to Tamir happen again, at least without being confronted. So it's not that I'm like, oh, okay, I'll say everything, put it all on me, this is wonderful. It feels like a moral and ethical obligation to society. I don't actually want to do it. I had no intention of doing it, of being on any media, saying anything. It's just that once I did, and somebody listened, I was going to be wrong to not continue that discussion.
Absolutely.
I still feel inside myself that if everything goes away, and I can go back to listening to podcasts all day while I do do some yard work, and I do my PhD work, and I write my dissertation, and no, my phone never rings, I will be perfectly happy once again. It's often like people thinking that I'm going to get something out of saying all this, but it's just quite the opposite. Like,
right.
Anybody that knows me will know that I very much kept to myself. I don't even know who the hell my neighbors are, and I've lived there for 7 years. My life was a life of solitude, and I actually very much enjoy not talking to anybody all day long. That's perfectly fine.
Sure.
But I have to do this. If someone's going to listen, it has to be done, because I don't think I could look in Tyrone West's sister's eyes, and I couldn't look in Freddie Gray's parents' eyes. I couldn't look in the city of Cleveland's eyes with integrity again if I didn't continue to answer the questions and try to do what I could.
Sure. Well, thank you for everything you're doing, man. You're a fascinating guy.
What do you think, Mike? You're being quiet, man.
I am. I like to take it in. No, it's really interesting to me to see like kind of your shared perspective that you're putting out there to kind of like come from this different world, and you're kind of describing that too, like of people that sort of don't get it and are kind of hesitant to kind of accept what you're saying and sort of trust you and take you in, but it's like it's kind of cool because you've sort of done that already. You're sort of breaking through the barrier, and you're like, yeah, I've listened to these ideas, I've listened to these different perspectives, and it's like, yeah, I've gained more from that, and I think if more people did that, then more people would get it, I think, and things would change, and I think that's the only way it's going to. Like, you talk about responsibility, like what, I mean, obviously people can vote, people can influence what happens, in City Hall and in the mayor's office and in the police department. But it's like, it's that personal responsibility that you feel, I guess, to get involved and to make a difference and not just sit back and be like, oh yeah, there's nothing we can do, or it's too far gone. So I think that's my interest in it is what can, like, how do we see not just Baltimore, but this greater problem that's everywhere. It's like what is the average Joe's responsibility to do? And I think it's like to get to actually to let down those barriers and understand.
And talk about it.
Right,
Yeah,
it's all
yeah,
like you
discussion.
wouldn't. Yeah,
Discussion.
if you haven't experienced something, you're never gonna understand it.
Yeah, it would be not okay for you to have all the experience that you have and just keep hush and just, I'm just going to worry about my lawn, and because it makes more sense to just worry about your daughter, and you have a family, you have, I don't want to say like things to lose, but it's kind of like that. To have these inconvenient conversations is very important. I don't think anybody else is really doing it that way, and you don't see, like I said, I'm not just kissing your ass. You don't seem like a disingenuous guy. It's not like you're here to plug something. You do truly seem reluctant to do this. You're not coming with all this, I'm on a mission for Jesus and I gotta fucking
I still got my PhD schoolwork, man. This is like,
Yeah.
this is like I'm supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, this is
yeah,
work,
like,
right.
like that's supposed to be a full-time focus, and that's all you do. Like, I mean, I have a schedule, like on a calendar on my phone from Leap, where it's like, here, now you're doing this, now you're doing that, now you're doing this, now you're doing that, and I have to like go in there, and my wife gets mad at me because I forgot to block off a day that I wasn't supposed to do anything, and now I got to go do something, and I don't have time for the family, and I still got to go do schoolwork, so I'm up till 1 o'clock in the morning doing schoolwork, and I mean, it's an incredible burden, and I pay money to do it, but the idea that somebody will listen is worth it, because if all I did was convince you to talk to 2 more people that convinced them, well, now we're talking about 6 people, and that's it. That's enough, because maybe those 6 people will also talk to 2 more people,
Sure.
and it will take more time, but we're really going to get there for the discussion, because all the facts are on this side. This is the right side of history. Right now, Bernie Sanders can proudly say that he walked across that Selma Bridge with Dr. Martin Luther King, and nobody else can say that. And at the time, people were looking at him like people are looking at me. So, in the future, this is certainly the right side of things. Like, get on the right side of these things, just like, with gay rights. All these people that are
Right.
saying this shit, 20 years from now, you're going to realize how much of an asshole you are.
Absolutely.
When you thought you were losing a right because someone else gained a right to love somebody else. I mean, you're a fucking
Right.
asshole.
Yeah, it's simple. You're just an advocate of peace and
Right.
love and understanding and communication. You can't go wrong with that.
But
And that's what we
it's threatening to people that aren't
Sure is.
that don't understand or don't want to change or to make that leap, because it is work. Like you have this perspective because you went into the police coming out of the Marines, and you had that experience, so maybe you weren't as afraid, walking down the street in the uniform as someone who's, green to that idea, and so from, you could do that job because of what you had in the past, and a lot of people can't, they just don't have that wiring to be like, oh yeah, I get it, like it's not all right to let this kind of thing continue?
Yeah, we have to face our demons. So, we have evolutionarily, you're kind of limited in your mind to about 150 to like 200 people because we were tribes, and that's how we went along. So the reason that at lunchtime, all the black kids would go sit together and all the white kids would go sit together really goes back to this evolutionary root. So we have to realize that that's wrong. So we first have to say, okay, this is a genetic flaw. I know, just for the exact same way that we have testosterone flowing through our bodies and we're programmed to reproduce with as many women as we possibly can, we have to sit there and go, for the greater good of life and the fact that I love this woman and I want her to stay with me, that I cannot follow that biological urge.
Right.
So you have to say no. We have a biological urge to keep in these small little groups. And we have to recognize that is a flaw. It's a logical flaw. So break out of it and do it reluctantly. So even if it's just going and sitting at that table where the black kids are sitting, go sit there. Because when you go sit there, you're going to realize that it's all fine. I used to do that with other officers. I kind of put that onus on them. They would do that. Like cops do that too. So all the black cops hang out, and then all the Hispanic cops hang out, and all the white cops hang out. And I would intentionally call them out. I would go up to them and say, hey, how about you guys go to the white table? How about you guys come over here? You guys go over there, and now we can have lunch. And just putting that on them, just saying it to them, you would get a couple of people to comply because they were embarrassed that you called them out on what is essentially appears to be a racist bias. Totally. And the thing is we do have that, understand that we do, and just go beyond it. Sure. I don't, you can have a preference for Asian women or for black women or something like that, and that's also not logical, but that's what you want, and that's okay. Expand your horizons, just be comfortable with who you are, because we all have these problems. Like every inadequacy that you have isn't an inadequacy that I felt. Is the kid that's Mike Brown size that seems super tough. He fucking cries when he watches Golden Girls or something and doesn't tell anybody about it. We're all the same like that. When you watch that movie and you're like, no, I'm not. I wasn't crying. I'm good. I'm money. Like everyone has that inside of them at that moment, and it's freaking okay. Like.
And that stereotypes exist for a reason. I love that somebody had like some fucking TED talk or something about how when you go and you sit down on the chair, you don't inspect the chair legs to make sure that you just sit down. So you stereotype, you assume I've sat down in chairs before. This must be like other chairs. So that there's a certain nature to stereotyping, and that's okay. Because I think people get worried, like, wait, I have some stereotypical thoughts. That's fine. That's why I love comedy. Because people are, that makes them laugh because they're, okay, it's all right to laugh at comedy because it exists. It's definitely there.
I did a TV show where they played a clip from Chris Rock, where the point was that how comedy can say things you want to say. It was that skit where Chris Rock is saying, look, none of y'all want to be me because I'm black and I'm rich.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a truth to that. So you have, that's the point. What he's pointing out is he is clearly successful,
right?
And you still don't want to be him.
Acclaim.
So it doesn't have anything to do with success or popularity or intelligence. It has to do with narrowing it down to the fact that he's black, and you don't want to be black, and he doesn't want to be white.
Right.
It's okay, it's all understandable that we are that way. Nothing wrong.
And we're all one generation away from, black water fountains and white water fountains. I mean, that happened here, and you
have
see
people that
an
are
old
alive
lady
with
around the corner. She saw that shit, so it's we're not
the housing. The housing is a big one.
Absolutely.
I think it was on Diane Rehm show I was listening to. They were talking about how in there was just a group of houses, and the houses sold for what would have been equivalent of $100,000. And the rules were set up with FHA and things that only white people could move into these types of neighborhoods. It was the same. Baltimore's infamously bad for this. And
with Wells Fargo.
Right. So, I mean, that's the way they were set up. That's more recent, but the FHA, like the whole government was designed to build the suburbs. So, like the suburbs don't exist without the highways. So you actually created this thing. And the houses in these neighborhoods were $100,000, and then it was some 20 years later the houses were worth $500,000. So that $400,000 of equity went all to white people. And then when you keep the blacks in these types of the houses where the values don't go up, the values actually tend to go down, and they actually will end up losing money. So that wealth that's built into the system goes right into white hands and is taken out of black hands. So you have to do something to reverse that. And that shit's painful. But that white privilege where we've gotten to where we are is something that we didn't deserve. So somebody's got to pay that piper and make things even again. And if that's us, like, we need to be the ones ready to step up and be willing to do that so that we can get things back to the way they're supposed to be. You can't take $400,000 for those families. I mean, just think about that. That's just one family, $400,000 of wealth that's built into their system, so that when those people die, they transfer that $400,000 of wealth to their children, whereas black families tend to transfer debt to their children. And you can't get out of that without something dramatic. So the same rules that enabled a white family to get $400,000 worth of equity just because of a rule, you need equally dramatic of a response to level that playing field again. And that may be painful, but it has to be done.
Well, awesome, man. No, thank you a million times. Thanks again. I appreciate it. And honestly, just what you're doing is fantastic, man. And you're very genuine. I'm a huge fan, man.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
I don't know about having fans, but okay, I'll take it.
I'm a fan. This guy's talking peace and love. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, want to wrap this thing up?
Sure.
Cool.
Wrap it up, B.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay. You can leave it all. You can cut it later.
Where can people find you?
Oh, so if you want to reach out there, it's a website that I kind of try to archive all the stuff that gets out there too, and the different types of interviews. So the website is my name, Michael A. Wood Jr., just JR.net. Don't put .com. I keep making that mistake myself, telling people it's .com. It's not. It's .net. I don't know why I do that. Reach out to me on Twitter. The website has contact form. Twitter's my name too, Michael A. Wood Jr. And any questions, the big thing is that I will change. If I'm doing something wrong, please tell me. Like, especially other cops. Like, you have all this criticism for me behind my back. Tell me what I'm saying wrong so I can change my points. I am on the cop side as well. I want police reform. That
Right.
means a better life for police and a better life for citizens. Like, bring these ideas to me so that if I have a podium, while I still do in this platform, like, let me get your point across as well if it's a better point than anything that I have. September 27th is the Vice special on HBO for Fixing the System. I'm in the trailer. I don't know how much I'm actually going to be in the show, but yeah, so that's a thing that's coming up.
I love Vice. They're awesome.
Cool.
Well, cool. Yeah. So do all that in between working on a PhD and having a family and
Yeah,
taking care of
thanks.
yourself.
I'm trying.
Whenever you have time, just save the world.
Yeah, just remember, no, I'm just in it for myself, and I'm just trying to ride that Freddie Gray
Exactly.
gravy train to some stage of
Exactly.
profitability and personal gain.
Awesome. All right. Well, cool. Well, see y'all later.
All right.